He's describing the existence of worlds that are not physical. You see, for us, the truth is according to what we see and hear. It's our perception that makes reality for us. So, what physically, with my physical eyes or physical senses and my physical mind, they tell me this is here, this is there, this is like this, I can hear this, I can see this. But a man is not only a physical being. And the universe is not only a physical universe. So, if we can extend the field of our vision, we see things which are not physically visible. If we can extend the field of our hearing, even the senses, we can connect with worlds that are not externally, materially there. But the material world, as he says, is not the only world. There are worlds upon worlds upon worlds. And this is what now he is coming in touch with. Planes and worlds where there are existences, there are beings, there are spirits, realities. Because we don't know them, sometimes we are afraid of them. Or we disbelieve them. Because we believe only our little understanding. So here, we start from there. This is the sob of rapture and unending pain of what? Who's this traveler? This traveler through the magic centuries, in the previous sentence. And the traveler is the soul. The soul that has adventured into space. And so this is the description. The Supreme who has, as if, projected himself into manifestation. And in this world of manifestation, there are all kinds of different planes and levels. And if the soul is no longer trapped in its cage of ignorance and inertia, as it is for most of us, in him it is not there. That ignorance is gone. The soul is free. That is why it is the yoga of the soul's release. It sees that is the purpose, that the one, the divine, has become the many. He enters into the experience of the many. So many worlds, so many beings, so many spirits, known, unknown, sometimes things that will help us to grow, sometimes things that hurt us, that also, in the end, all help us to grow. There are pains and shocks and blows and joys and loves and all forms of discoveries. It's an adventure. It's an adventure of consciousness, of opening and experiencing things that until then we never experienced. The unknown is something we are afraid of because we are trapped in our little ignorance. But in him, this ignorance is not there. The ego is not there. And so for him, it's in a kind of a broad field of experience and discovery. So all this, the mystic meaning of its birth, why has the soul come into matter and life and mind? It is the divine who has come down into the inertia, into the darkness, in order to break the opposition between matter and spirit. Spirit comes down into matter, works its way through all the different layers of resistance in order to reconnect the two ends of existence, the supreme consciousness and the supreme unconsciousness. Otherwise, they remain divided, matter and spirit. So it is this, but this reconnection is not so straightforward, simple, often difficult. So there are these, all the different experiences, the gifts of life, its large breath and pulse and thrill of hope and fear. It's like entering into all these unknown territories of each plane has its own character, has its own principles, has its own way of being. And it is a kind of a continuous journey of discovery. if we know how to live, then we also live recognizing that each experience can become an opportunity for entering into connection with a different play of manifestation, a different combination of forces. And these are not necessarily what we, in our mental, simplistic way, say this is good, this is bad. It's all part of one play. What we make and understand as bad is what hurts us or doesn't fit into our own small understanding of what should be the truth or the light. And it's such a conceited way of saying, who am I to say what the divine should or should not be or do? This is our mental pride and ego. He has broken down all these things. He's entering into all these fields of experience. Its rapture's poignant breath and beat of sudden bliss, the sob of its passion and unending pain. So the joy, the pain, the different experiences, all these. There is a very beautiful sonnet by Sri Aurobindo called Shiva. Shiva is the supreme consciousness, the supreme ascetic, plunged in his trance of infinity, eternity. Then, from below, there's a force that climbs. It's perhaps the daughter of the mountain, Parvati. From the stone, from the lower levels, slowly emerging, the force of evolution, and disturbing his complete ascetic calm, uniting herself with him because she is he. So it is this image of nature and spirit. Basically, they are one. In the play, they become two. And then the two become many. But to reunite from below and link with the one that is above and find that experience of the one that is the whole. So these moments and these experiences which crowd around our hearts but find no window to enter. It is there in all of us, but there is a kind of cage of darkness and ignorance. That is why these forces, these experiences don't seem to be lived by us. We continue to use our mental judgment and a kind of, you might say, the framework of our physical, vital, mental nature. All these is part of one continuous play. But since we have blocked it by these narrow frames and compartments, these forces don't come within the reach of our experience very often. But in him, he's broken down the definitions of the mind, the ego of the vital, and so they entered into his consciousness and find no window to enter. Though usually they don't enter into our consciousness. We are not open. One of the most important things is that we have to break down this narrowness, remain completely free, equal, open, equanimity. And in him they entered. They not only entered, they swelled into a canticle of all that suffers to be still unknown. That which suffers that means is allowed, permitted. All that remains unknown, a whole universe of experience that is waiting behind the surface. That surface barrier is broken. And so it comes out in a song of a hymn of joy. A canticle is a hymn of joy, of thanksgiving to the divine, to say that the divine is not one only, not two. He is the all, he is the many. The many is the one. All is the one. and all that labors vainly to be born, the struggle of that which has to break out of its darkness, of its error, of its unconsciousness, the whole process of evolution from darkness to light. The whole journey of the universe is a journey from darkness to light. But it is not a straight journey. There's a lot that still resists. There is an enormous amount of resistance, downward pulls. We lose our way halfway. We go back to the starting point. So there are areas and experiences, areas of consciousness, experiences that still have to be lived, discovered. If we are entering into the infinite, there is a field of infinite discovery that is also there. The infinite is infinitely variable, infinitely wide, infinitely complex. And all the sweetness, none will ever taste. It is as if the joy that has not yet and perhaps will not manifest until we become that sweetness. Until we have changed ourselves and become the embodiment of that which is beautiful and perfect, there is a sense of the sweetness. One of the names of the divine is Madhu. So it is that sense of perfect harmony and sweetness. And until that has not been established, we cannot experience the delight in all things. We still remain selective. According to our ability, according to our openness, certain things we relate to, other things we refuse to accept. So all these things are there, they're everything. Everything that is manifested, everything that is unmanifested, everything that belongs to the future, everything that has belonged to the past, because it's all one continuous present. Past, present, future, these are little categories that our smallness, we move from one moment to the other. But the eternal is at the same time everywhere and at all times. So these separations, divisions, he is transcending them slowly. He is breaking out. His spirit is breaking out of its boundaries. And all the beauty that will never be until matter is transformed, until matter becomes an embodiment of the spirit. Beauty is an expression of the divine in form, in matter. And matter is the home of also resistant inertia. So until the spirit of perfection is allowed to manifest itself, where there is no resistance, no falsehood, no perversity, that beauty cannot be. Beauty is not only in the world of physical form. There is a beauty of thought, there is a beauty of action, there is a beauty of nature, but that is a perfect expression of perfection. It's a form of expression. If in that expression there are twists and turns and perversities, that perfection cannot manifest itself wholly. There might be here and there certain sparks of light and joy, but the fullness cannot be until the totality of darkness and ignorance is removed. So again, continuing the entry into these inner countries, or not just inner, they are within us, they are above us, they are around us. Inaudible to our deaf mortal ears, the wide world rhythms wove their stupendous chant. So the whole universe is something sustained by a divine energy. When that energy is unbroken by ignorance, like rhythm. Rhythm is a pattern of sound, that sound is energy, conscious force. When it remains unbroken, then the music or the movement is transmitted without flow. Now, the universe is a field of movement. It is not static. Nothing is static, not just the earth. We are part of a whole play of continuous rise and fall and evolution and change and discovery. And this play is part of the divine plan. The plan is something that has been worked out on the higher worlds, which things are absolutely already there. It's like a music which is already there in the consciousness of the musician. It is transmitted, translated into the external world when this being is capable of transmitting it. I have the instruments, or I have the voice, or I have the capacity to transmit that sound, then the music is heard. Otherwise, the music already exists. So it is as if the universe is of perfection already exists. Unless the universe of perfection already did not exist, how would we move towards it? Unless there is a goal, the goal has to be there before I start moving towards it. Otherwise, there is no purpose in my journey. The end always has to precede the beginning. And because it is there, because the divine is there, because perfection is there, man makes the effort to grow. Man, because of his weaknesses, fails, resists, falls, gets hurt. But because the divine grace also is there is an upward push. So it is a continuous journey of rising and falling. It's a movement, like a rhythm. The whole world is in a cycle. There is a kind of a continuous cyclical pattern of rise and fall and change and growth. So the wide world rhythm, it's not just individual, it's the universe. Wove their stupendous chant, to which life strives to fit our rhyme beats here. It is this archetypal world. This is called the archetypal plane. Plato said, there is a perfect world. And we, because there is something in us that knows that there is a perfect world, we want to live a perfect life. We may not be able to do so, but something in us knows. This is part of the philosophy of Plato also, the world of archetypes. It's already there, which is a divine creation. But even in our mind, here is the yoga of the jnani. He knows that there has to be a world of perfection. Otherwise the world would collapse. It couldn't be sustained. Yes, we make mistakes on our journey. So we fall, we fail, we get hurt, we die. But we start again. The journey is resumed because that goal, that perfection pre-exists. And it never goes away. It is always there. So our life tries to match, to some extent, each individual tries to live up to that perfection. In our best moments, we fail very often if we continue to remain closed in our ignorant egos. But if we have broken out of that cage of ignorance and ego, as Ashwapati has done, the individual, the soul is the divine individual, becomes the guide of the lesser ordinary surface individual. There are two individuals. There is the surface personality, your body, life, mind, and there is the inner guide, which is the eternal and the divine. And when we are no longer separated, we don't separate one from the other any longer, then we try to live up to that perfection, because that perfection is inherent to us. Perfection, eternity, divinity, these are things that are within us. We try to live up to that because if we break down the wall separating our surface, shallow, ignorant, darkened nature and the inner presence, this is again when the soul is no longer closed by the walls of ignorance. It is released from the walls of ignorance. So, even when we have not broken out fully from that cage of ignorance, even then there is this dream and hope of something perfect, divine. Therefore, whatever is undivine, whatever is imperfect, we dislike. Whatever is death-bound, we don't want. We can't achieve that perfection, but something in us is repulsed by these things. Why? Because that principle of perfection and divinity is there. It is in seed form. We have to nourish the seed. We have to allow it to grow. Then it will flower, it will manifest. Otherwise, it waits. It waits through the centuries because we have turned our consciousness, our mind outwards. For us, reality is on the outside. But when we realize that the outside and the inside are part of one whole, there is no barricade. The soul and nature are part of one creation. You don't have to give up one to find the other. Then a new kind of life, a new manifestation begins to appear on our horizon. The journey is long, the struggle also, but the possibility, the promise is there. So you say you have to move towards that. That is waiting for us. And it is this which our life strives to fit our rhyme beats here, melting our limits in the illimitable. Melting down that sense of frozen, we live in a kind of being where we are frozen in this cold existence where the warmth of the conscious love and grace is not felt. It is this image of the struggle that man has that is trying to break out of this world that traps him. That is that famous poem that Sri Aurobindo liked very much, and he translated it, of Mallarmé, where speaks of the swan. The swan is the symbol of the soul that is trapped in the ice and is struggling to break out, to emerge from that cold, lifeless ice. It is a symbol of man. He has a soul that is infinite and eternal. We have shut it behind these layers of absolute unconscious life, surface life. But when we have begun to come out of it, then we can hear a low muttering rose from the subconscious caves, even from the lowest level. Because in the subconscious and below the subconscious, the unconscious, there are all possibilities that are lodged. They are there, they are waiting to be brought out. The unconscious seems to be the opposite of this conscious. But how can that which is below climb upwards? It doesn't know the direction. How is it that the seed climbs towards the sun? Unless the knowledge that it should climb towards the sun were not latent inside the seed. It is there, in the darkness, is the truth of the light that is hidden in the darkness. But we have to dare to plunge that far, we get trapped long before that. We don't go that far. We are destroyed by all the surface attacks. Because man is troubled by all these surface difficulties. He gets so troubled by the vital, then the physical, and all these problems that he doesn't go further. He wants a perfect life, but what he calls a perfect life is a life free of difficulties. He cannot be free of difficulties unless he has rooted out of himself the source of all difficulties. And that source is the refusal to relate to the inner hidden divine. Man refuses in his surface nature to believe that there is a divine presence, and that can take us through all things. If that soul is allowed to come forward, then there is a movement, continuous movement towards light. If you recall in the book The Mother, Sri Aurobindo says, follow your soul and not your mind. Your mind that looks at appearances and believes only in appearances. There is an inner guide, and if that is allowed to take over, then whatever may be the journey, it may not be a smooth journey, because there are so many elements in us that are always obstructing our path, our imperfections. But the soul will take us through all these things, even though sometimes it has to shake us up, beat us, or wake us up from our sleep. But it will guide us. In each of us also there is a divine, especially here, that presence, that grace, that love, that guidance, which is also around, above, not only within. And still we are shut up in our little egos and our ignorances. So, when this is slowly emerging, this consciousness, a low muttering rose from the subconscious caves. Muttering, in the sense that there is the first sounds. The total unconsciousness is total inertia, complete resistance. There is a break, there is a change. Muttering is also associated with resistance, grumbling. Somebody disturbs your sleep and you're not pleased. So the subconscious is not pleased because there is a push, there is a drive. Energy is starting to make itself known. In the inconscient, that energy seemed completely inert. But it is there. Matter is nothing but energy. But it is dormant energy. You break matter and you get energy. But it is totally still. In the subconscious, that stillness begins to go. It's a signs of movement. But still attached to a great deal of resistance and darkness. The downward pull is very strong. And so each time there is something that pushes us out of our darkness. There is a grumbling, there is a resistance, there is a complaint. We love to complain. It's a big pleasure that we have. It's part of our subconscious nature, a lower vital nature. So, a low muttering rose from the subconscious caves, the stammer of the primal ignorance. Ignorance is silent. Speech is expression, it's a projection of sound which is conscious. A certain amount of consciousness has to be there when you speak a word. There's an intention. When that consciousness is not without any, you might say, it is broken by ill will, conscious, like somebody who's been asked to wake up from sleep and he doesn't want to wake up from sleep. There is a disturbance, there is unwillingness. So ignorance is a very happy state in a sense, because it is completely inert. That's why there is a saying that ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is not bliss, perhaps, but ignorance is absence of pain. You're totally ignorant, you can't feel anything, you can't even feel pain. The moment you start feeling, you feel, you respond. You respond to all kinds of different experiences, contacts. Some of them shake you, disturb you. So they are like broken responses. They are not happy, harmonious responses necessarily. They are broken responses. So there is argument. We argue with the divine. We disbelieve in the divine. We try to prove that whatever he is saying is not necessarily true. All these things, they are all actually something in us knows that what he is saying, what Sri Aurobindo is saying, is the whole truth. But some part in us doesn't want to believe everything. For him it is easy, for us it is not. All these things come in the way. We are attached to our ignorance, to our imperfections. It is a broken response. It takes a long time to come out of it. Answer to that inarticulate questioning, there stooped with lightning neck and thunder's wings a radiant hymn to the inexpressible and the anthem of the superconscient light. What is interesting, when you speak of the hymn and the wings, it's an upward movement. Here he says stooped. It's a downward movement. Something that is coming down from above, from below the first breaking down of the resistance of unconsciousness and subconsciousness. Even the first attempts, you can feel as if the downrush of the grace and the power, it is always there waiting for us. If only, as Mother says, humanity consented to be spiritualized. It is waiting for our consent. And that consent sometimes comes at the end of a lot of unwillingness and resistance. But when it does come, so it's an inarticulate questioning. Articulate is mental. When you are articulating something, you're speaking clearly. Inarticulate is when it is not spoken by the mind only, but something in the vital, something in the subconscious, something in the body. They all resist. They all pull us down. Even when the mind has understood, the body has not, or the vital has not. But if there is the first sign of response, there is as if the downrush of the divine grace here compared to a bird that is coming down, anthem of the superconscient light. With a hymn, an anthem, song of joy, of truth, and the promise of victory. The anthem is a song of victory. All these that seem to say, this is the reason why we are here. The light, the grace, the force is always there. It requires just some kind of breaking out of our resistance, and it will take us up. Because the stoops down with lightning. Lightning breaks the darkness in a flash. Thunder, symbol of power. So there is consciousness and force, light and power. The hymn to the inexpressible, that which mind also cannot understand, that is far beyond the mind. And the anthem of the superconscient light. So that means that what is below is actually hiding the highest light. Below the lowest unconsciousness, the light, the divine power, the truth is hidden. If one can break that covering, wall of dark, inert surface resistance. And the first signs, as mother's experience of finding at the very bottom of the inconscient, she saw the seeds, the spring that threw her up forthwith into a limitless vast that were the seeds that held the seeds of the new world. So that power, that energy, that force is at the very bottom of the inconscient. The Supreme is sleeping below the inconscient. You have the image of the Lord asleep below the universe, sustaining the universe. The image of Vishnu, he is asleep. It's a symbol. He is still, undisturbed. But out of that supreme sleep, the whole play of creation begins. So at the very bottom is the Supreme. At the very top is the Supreme. Man is in the middle. He is the one who can move from one level to the other. And that is the great privilege of man, that he can climb, he can move, he can change. But climbing is not always steady. You climb a mountain, you slide down, you break a leg, you hurt yourself, then you refuse to climb again. So it takes long. The journey is not straightforward, not simple. There is no hesitation, for instance, in the plant that knows it has to move towards the sun if it wants to survive. There is hesitation in man. But I don't need to go upwards. I want to discover what is all around me. I want to discover what is inside me. I want to find out other things. The journey becomes longer, more complex, but in the final analysis, it has taken into its scope all different fields of possibility and manifestation. And so it takes into its range things that the tree never thought of because it doesn't have a mind that questions. Man's mind questions and doubts and hesitates. But behind it, there is the knowledge that why am I doubting the truth? Because somewhere in me, I know there is a truth. Something in my ego says, I don't need to know it. I know already everything that I need to know. This complexity, this division, is what slows down our journey. But when this can be completely fulfilled, perfected, then man becomes an embodiment of the all. He becomes the divine. And all these obstacles and errors can be made use of as stepping stones towards perfection. We can become expressions of the all. So, all was revealed there, none can hear express. In those worlds, none can hear in our mental world express, because these are not mental truths. These are not formulas or definitions of philosophy. These are experiences that have to be revealed, revelation. Revelation, vision, intuition, these are experiences that put us in direct contact with the truth. Mind is indirect. Mind judges, analyzes, fails to explain, doubts therefore, is it worth it? Can it be done? If you have a flash of revelation, all these are stopped. You know because you have seen the light. Inspiration, it has entered into you, the breath that has entered into you, and when the breath of the Lord is abroad upon the waters of your being, then you become an expression of, even for a moment, an expression of the divine truth. So these are also possible for the higher mind, not the rational mind. intuition or inspiration or revelation and vision, they belong to the higher levels of the mind. So not here you cannot express them with the logical mind. So vision and dream were fables spoken by truth. It's the interplay of apparent opposites. A dream exists, not in the material plane just now. But how can you have a dream of something if it were not existing somewhere? It's a forming. A dream is a formation that you make. It has to be there somewhere. Not necessarily in your immediate entourage, but it is there. Vision, not this physical vision. The vision of worlds that are beyond the physical. And there is no matter. And because there is no matter, there is no deterioration. There is no deterioration, there is no destruction. It is simply an expression of perfection. So this is what happens. Vision is therefore in this world called Satya Drishti. Not this physical vision. Extending our senses, capacity is there in us to extend our senses into ranges that are beyond the physical, because we are not only physical beings. So there are these immaterial senses, sukshma indriya. Indriya is your senses. You can see the invisible, you can hear the inaudible, you can taste that which is not there in the material world, but you can thrill with that joy and the sweetness. So these are the experiences of the Rishi. Vision and dream were fables spoken by truth, or symbols more veridical than fact. Veridical is truthful, but material truth. Symbols are more true than outer fact, because a symbol contains a truth which is not limited by the outer. A symbol stands for something that is beyond the material. It always stands for a truth that is beyond the form. Or were truths enforced by supernatural seals. Seal, you get the stamp of authority. The stamp of the king is on his seal. So these visions come, these, you might say, experiences come. If they do come, it is a sure sign that the divine stamp is there, waiting to finally take us forward to the greater experiences. A sign of experiences, the road is infinitely long and infinitely wide, and we can open, we don't have to live in this narrow little lane of human thought. This is what he is moving. Okay, shall we stop here?